Well, hello everybody. This is Manny Aragon, and welcome to the final installment of the 2014 Endurance Summit. I've got a bit of a question and answer for you today. A few questions from the folks out there listening, and also, and I'm going to kind of focus the episode today around those questions as they help me to get a better idea for what are the kinds of things what are the problems out there that people are kind of facing and want some help with. So we'll talk a little bit about those, but first off, I'm going to get started on. I'm just kind of go over really quickly what I believe to be the 5 aspects of performance, and these are things that I kind of deal with on a daily basis in my practice, and it's kind of put into a format that you can categorize it in your mind, like, okay, I've got 5 areas. If there were 5 areas that I could work on, like, what would they look like? And this is just based on my experience in the field and with working with athletes and competing myself, also with talking to the experts and such. But coming from the perspective of the work that I do, which is primarily structural biomechanics, metabolic work, and nutritional work, obviously many times in the kind of role of helping somebody to overcome either an injury or a overtraining situation or some kind of, perhaps they're just getting started in the field, whatever. So the 5 elements, 5 aspects of performance, the way I see them are, 1, I'll list them off and I'll kind of go through them for you. The first one would be structural efficiency. So when we're talking about structural efficiency, and I may have talked a little bit about this before when I talked about sport-specific biomechanics and alignment, but structural efficiency is the ability of, is how efficient does your structure, your body structure, move through space in the way that you want it to. In other words, for your sport specifically. So if you're an endurance athlete, say like a swimmer or a triathlete or ultra runner or a cyclist, how easily, how much, how efficiently, how little energy can you and movement can you use to move through space in the way that you'd like to over the period of time that you'd like to. And so that then allows you, obviously, many other things. But so the second thing, before I get into structural efficiency, the second thing would be metabolic efficiency. How well does your body produce energy to allow you to then move efficiently through space? So how efficient are you at producing energy and muscular power? Now, that's different from structural efficiency, because structural efficiency would deal more with just the ease of the ability of the body to move, not necessarily the strength of the body or the period of time over which the body can move or the speed at which the body can move. That's more governed by metabolic efficiency. Okay, so now let's talk about the third aspect. And the third aspect would be mental clarity and focus. Are you able to clearly focus on the task ahead of you, the task at hand, in the moment, or are you easily distracted? In endurance sports, this is critical, as we've seen over the course of the summit with many interviews, and anybody who's raced can tell you, whether it's a 5K or whether it's an Ironman. There's, some would say the 5K is more intense in terms of mental clarity and focus than the Ironman, and perhaps the pain is of a greater level, but then again, ask a 5K athlete to maintain that over iron distance for 8, 10, 12, 14 hours, and it's difficult. So they're apples and oranges, and at the same time, whatever distance you race and whatever distance you aspire to race, it's a huge, huge component of what's going to affect both your metabolic efficiency and your structural efficiency. And we'll talk about why in a minute. Now, the fourth aspect would be the strength of your body. So this is muscular strength, but I want to specifically talk about functional strength. And this is, we've all heard this term before, functional strength. What is functional strength? And the way that I define functional strength is, and we can get very, very contextual with this, but just in general, when I look at a body, which I do all day, when I look at bodies and I look to see how they move, the very first thing I look at when they're in movement, this is after looking at them in static. So in static, I look at a body and I say, how do the different segments of this body, how are they situated in space and in gravity and oriented relative to one another, such that the structures below are either supporting the structures above or not? And to what extent is there support in the upper structures of the body provided by the lower structures, and where do the lower structures not support the upper body? And this is a story that's told by looking at the four different sides of the body. So you've got your front, left side, right side, and the back side of the body. This is just in static. Now, once I look at that, I would take you into movement and say, okay, so based on what I've seen, and now looking at the movement, how do the three main segments in the body, the legs, the pelvis, and the trunk, how do those three segments either work together or not work together? Because when you're talking about moving through space, unless you're in a using a hand cycle or something like that, and you're using both your lower limbs and your upper limbs, the trunk is the conduit, the pelvis is the conduit for the transfer of power and support in the gravitational field for the body. So how do those three segments work together or not? And coming out of that, so there's going to be an integral strength. And is it uniform? It's never uniform. How uniform is it? And how well do these body parts work together? Functional strength is a measurement of that aspect in a more contextual setting. In other words, what is your functional strength for swimming type movements? What is your functional strength for running type movements? What is your functional strength for bicycling type of movements? And these, so just in a nutshell, strength, and that's how I define it. And then the last part of that is going to be recovery. We're not going to talk about training plans or any of that, because that is really not my area of expertise. That is really not my area of expertise. There were many people in this summit, many panelists who specialize in that, and those are people you should look to for that. But this is, what today is about, is how well does your body work for you, and how can you improve your body's ability to take on a training plan, to take on a big challenge like an Ironman or a Spartan race or a race across America or whatever. What kind of shape are you in to be able to do that? And we can talk more about that in a minute. But recovery. So let's talk about recovery. The way I define recovery is this is not a definition, but an example of the practical use of recovery is, and a way to measure it is, how often are you able to work out hard each week? There's obviously some age relativity there, but some of the things that you would look for are, if you're, to see if you are getting properly recovered. Can you sleep? Are you having trouble sleeping? Are you pooping regularly? Do you have lingering soreness? Are you constantly exhausted? Are you having trouble thinking? Are you getting sick often? Are you getting chronically injured? So these are the types of things, recovery. Now, we've got a lot of tools for recovery, and we've got a lot of tricks and biohacks and things like that to get recovered faster, and methods for training to allow you to recover faster. But this is a huge one, and it's totally, totally underrated. If I go to my Facebook feed right now and I look down the list, of triathletes on there because I'm more of a triathlete. So I look at it, and I got a whole bunch of them on my Facebook feed. More often than not, actually, I don't think there's ever been a day where I haven't looked at my feed and somebody's not injured or got some kind of chronic challenge that they're battling, or they've trained hard for a race and their performance, it's not like they had a bad day. It's kind of like they're frustrated because every time they have a race, it's kind of a bad day. These types of things, these are like signs of improper recovery, and then for many people also improper training. The interview yesterday with Ben Greenfield would be a great place to start for proper training. And he brushed up on all of these topics quite a bit, a little bit each one, but I want to expand on them a little bit. So let's go a little more into depth. First off, I'm going to go to a question that I got that pertains to this, and you can see why I brought this material up. So I had a conversation with a person recently who is trying to, I guess, has fallen out of shape and is trying to get into better shape, and is running into some challenges getting into the shape that they were in before. So I asked many, many questions, and one of the things that popped out at me again and caused me to ask some more questions is when this person said they're not able to get their heart rate up as easily as they were before to the rates that they were at before. So that was one. And the second part of that was after a certain amount of time during a tempo run, I'm running out of breath. So there's two, in my mind, there's a couple of different problems there, but let's take this down to one problem. Let's just focus on one. So if you can't get your heart rate back up to where it was before, heart rate will go up if you are untrained. It'll go up very easily if you're out of shape or untrained. It should go up pretty high. So if you can't get your heart rate up, in fact, heart rate will go up higher when you're not trained than when you are trained. So if your heart rate's going higher than it usually does, that might be a sign, and you haven't trained for a while, that might be a sign that you're out of shape. If your heart rate is not going up, if you can't get up to where you were getting it before, that might be a sign that either you're well trained, and then I would question why you're trying to get your heart rate so high, or the other part, and this is kind of in this scenario, is perhaps, and then the follow-up question to this was, have you had a lot of stress in your life lately? And the answer was yes. Yes, there was a lot of stress in this person's life. So that led me to ask my next question, or to my next, possible set of circumstances, which is, okay, that raises in my mind the distinct possibility that this person has fallen into either an overtraining or under recovery scenario. And if they weren't training when they had the stress, then the stress itself, and let's clarify this for a minute, there are many types of stress in the body. There's physical stress, which we do when we train in endurance exercise. There's emotional stress, which we put on ourselves, or it's kind of the constraints of society that we live in, having the job, worrying about the bills, worrying about pissing your wife off because you're out too long training, and worrying about whether or not you're going to make your Ironman gold time, or that you forgot, or you got a flat tire, or that you forgot your food, or whatever it is. There's that type of stress. That's two types. There's chemical stress, which is whatever environmental chemicals we're exposed to, the things that we use in our houses, the detergents, the personal products, the air that we breathe, the pollution in the water, in the food, and all kinds of different things. Okay, our body has to purify that out as well. And then there's food stress, and we'll call that food stress specifically, because it would have to do with foods that are either compromising your insulin resistance, your insulin sensitivity, or foods that are damaging your body because you are sensitive to them, so they're stimulating your immune system. and possibly inflammation. So there's those types of stress, and any one of those types of stress can deplete your body. So we think as athletes that it's all about physical stress, but anyone can tell you who's got a very busy job that if they have a stressful day at work, even if they didn't exercise the next day, they're just not able to bang it out as hard as they were perhaps the day before the stressful day, when they didn't have a stressful day. They had a restful night of sleep, and they were fully recovered. So there's a few tools in there. Ben Greenfield mentioned measuring your level of recovery using an iPhone app called SweetBeats, which we linked out to on his call, and also a Bluetooth. SweetBeats requires a Bluetooth heart rate monitor. So if you go to greenfieldfitnesssystems.com, they've got the SweetBeats thing up there, and it gives you a link so you can see like which heart rate monitors are compatible. And that's a great way, when you get up in the morning, to take a heart rate variability test and say, how recovered am I? Anyway, back to the story. So the question was this: I can't get my heart rate up. What's going on? There was stress in this person's life. There were other things that were pointing to depletion and under recovery. So what I then made several suggestions. Obviously, not seeing a person, there's only so much I can suggest. And one of the things that came up was the possibility for adrenal depletion. And the question, when I raised the question came back, well, how do you know if how can you operate if your adrenals exhausted? And the answer to that is you can't. You'll be dead. If you have no adrenal strength at all, you'll be dead. But to the extent that your adrenal is compromised and the function is compromised by a long-term stressor, you may or may not be able to recover quickly, depending on what stage adrenal depletion you're in. So in that case, I recommend an adrenal stress test, and with a broader hormonal profile, and that'll allow us to then look and see what is going on with this person, and then we can, based on what we find, we can suggest the proper protocol for getting them back to a place of health where they can actually get their heart rate back up, get the performance back, start the training plan. So this is an example of a person who, in this case, was not necessarily overtrained, but it could have easily just been the same scenario where they've overtrained. The same thing can happen. So question one. Question two was, there's a person who contacted me, they've got debilitating back pain. The question is, what do I do about this? And initially the symptoms pointed to that this person was perhaps had some discompression in the lower disc. So we talked a bit about that. Is there discompression? What do you do if there's discompression? What are the signs of discompression? And so some of the basic signs of that for people out there are, and I'll name the more minor ones and the more major ones. But the more minor ones are, particularly for lumbar discompression, would be a dull ache or dull pain or numbness or tingling or a sharp shooting pain anywhere from the lower back into the buttock, into the leg, and all the way down to the foot. Sometimes a person can have a weakness in their hip. So these are all possible signs of discompression. And when I say compression, I'm talking about a bulge. Herniation would be farther along there. And usually that's going to be L4-5 or L5-S1. Those are the places where people generally tend to suffer, just the way that humans are built. So there's that. So, is that the case? If that's not the case, if it's not discompression, if you're not feeling any of those, and it's just pain in the lower back, then there's a couple of possibilities that come up. And in my mind, and in my practice, there are two major possibilities. It's one of these two things. And one of them is either there's compression in the low back or there's hypermobility in the low back. Either one can lead to pain. So you have to make an evaluation. Am I hypermobile down there or am I overtight? and that's really best done by a professional. It's hard to really do it on your own. It's much easier for another person to see that. Either one can produce similar results. Hypermobile is usually easier to fix and much more common with all the sitting that people do than over tight or over compressed. You might find that in more of a situation where you have like a weightlifter or somebody who's doing a lot of strength training, or a person who's been, say, like a soldier who's been under really intense stress for a long period of time. The tissues might have just hardened up. So what do you do about that? You basically go to a sports med chiro, or generally a lot of times people go to orthopedists and such, and you can get some good advice from orthopedists. The basic advice you get from them, or generally the assessment you get from them, would be, is it a compression or is it a herniation or what? And then after that, most often they're going to recommend some kind of decompression, whether it's being in a what do you call it? Anti-gravity chair. It's like you turn upside down. I forgot what it's called, or some kind of surgical procedure. Sometimes, often, they'll just prescribe you with painkillers in the hopes that it goes away. Most often, it's not going to go away, especially if it's a stability issue, which is, like I said, the most common. So, in those cases, that's where you'd be better served by sports medicine, chiropractic, perhaps, going to them to get an evaluation. And I had a great discussion with Dr. Joseph Zapala earlier in this summit about this very type of subject. So go back and listen to that particular episode because he's a person who would be an expert in making that evaluation. In my practice, I will make the evaluation as to whether it's overly mobile or overly stiff. Dr. Zapala would have access to X-rays and MRIs and things like that, where you can have a more clinical evaluation. And the more serious, or the more of those signs that are available, that are present, the more you want to actually go and get those more clinical evaluations, because chances are there's something a little more serious going on. It doesn't mean I don't help people with those scenarios. It just means that I don't use those tools. Oftentimes it's really good, and I refer people out all the time. So there's that scenario. What do you do about it? Those are some places to go. Now the third would be a person was pulled a tendon in their leg, and they've got an upcoming Ironman. What do you do? What do you do? And I made some recommendations there. In that case, the person was ambulatory. The leg was only challenged when running or kicking and swimming, but not on the bike. So in that case, biking, pulling in the water, and not running. So keeping the fitness, improving the fitness with the biking and pulling in the water, and not running. And then gingerly feeling your way through movement when you're in gravity, i.e. on your feet, to see what kinds of movements, and possibly some functional strength training there, but most likely not. And in that case, actually, in the last two cases, anytime there's an injury, then you want to then look at a couple of items. What, can you drop the inflammation, and then can you provide the body with tools and foods so that it can then repair itself? Because one of the things that you should know, if you don't already know this, is, and I see this on a daily basis, and since I run a non-medical holistic clinic, I'm constantly dealing with this. This is a sweet spot for my practice, because I don't use drugs, I don't use the more clinical diagnostics, although I refer out for them. What can a person do to improve their body's ability to heal and to speed that process? Because your body inherently knows how to heal, and as soon as you're injured, it will start to heal you. So, now, by the way, all of these three different questions are issues that could possibly have arisen because of under-recovery and perhaps or overtraining. Not to mention nutritional deficiencies and all kinds of other things. So these, if you're a triathlete, I'm sure you know somebody with chronic back pain. I'm sure you know somebody who's got a chronically pulled tendon or muscle or Achilles or something like that. And I'm sure you know somebody who's overtrained themselves or stressed out to the point where they can't get their heart rate up anymore. And perhaps if you've trained for an Ironman at all, you've probably encountered that yourself from overtraining. So most of us have done that. It's a tendency to do that. So how do you recover from that stuff? And this is, so I'm going to focus a little bit on that now. So the basic elements of recovery, the way I see it are, one, not overtraining. And that's probably the biggest one. And how do you not overtrain? You get the iPhone app and you basically use this would be the easiest DIY way, is you use the Sweet Beats app on an iPhone and your Bluetooth heart rate monitor to measure your heart rate variability every morning. And let that be a guide to you as to whether or not you're fully rested. And actually Ben Greenfield brought this up during our discussion, and it was based on how rested you are and recovered you are in the morning, you're then going to either stick with your workout schedule, or you're going to modify it. Or if you're not confident, you're going to call your coach, tell them what you measured. They have to be on board with heart rate variability, by the way, and have them modify it. But the point being that if you just stay on plan because it's mind over matter, you will eventually deplete yourself and run into this situation. So this is more of like a how do you save yourself. So use that heart rate variability testing. The second thing you can do on a regular basis, and that's very easy and inexpensive to do, is take cold showers. This is super easy. Everybody's got cold in their shower. In fact, it costs less to use cold than it does to use hot. And what I found is, during the winter, obviously it's going to be more difficult than during the summer. But what I found is, over time, I've become more accustomed to the cold shower. So it's easier to get in, and it's easier to take a shower. Whereas in the past, I used to start on warm, and then I'd slowly work my way down to cold. Now, I simply turn the shower on. I turn it all the way to cold because my wife uses hot. I turn it all the way to cold, turn it on, get in the shower, have it aimed at my feet, relax, take a few deep breaths, and then slowly bring the shower up my body till my chest, which is usually the most sensitive part, is wet. And I get my head wet, stuff. Once my head's wet, I might move around quickly. But the point is, this does a variety of things. So first off, use the cold showers. Now, my water doesn't get that cold in the summer. It gets, it's cool, but it's not that cold. The swimming pools that I swim in are too warm for this. The beach, I'm near the ocean, so if you're near the ocean, the beach can be a great place for this. Right now, the water's actually pretty warm, so it's probably not going to be as cold as my shower. But, you spend some time in there and you'll get some of this effect. If you're in the surf, so you're swimming without a wetsuit. So in my case, the water's up around, 65, 68 degrees right now. It's fairly swimmable without a wetsuit. You're in there for 40 minutes, an hour, and you're getting the effects. Cold shower, a little shorter. And then, people use ice baths. There is a cold, whole body cryotherapy, which we talked about, and Dan Sapkowski of Polar Cryotherapy was one of our experts to talk about that in terms of recovery, in terms of getting that hormonal response. But the point is that cold brings on a variety of responses, one of which is it bumps up your metabolism, so it's going to cause you to burn more fat. And then two, it's going to also release, it's going to cause a cascade, hormonal cascade that releases anti-inflammatories into your body and helps your body to heal itself. So that's another way. And then the third really simple way, and there's all kinds of modalities you could do. You can come to my office, you can take a bunch of supplements, and I have a ton of different anti-inflammatory supplements that I have available to me and that I take on a regular basis and under different circumstances. And I may bump that out to another podcast and talk about that more in depth. There are all kinds of different things that a person can do, but the really easy ones are sleep, heart rate variability. Make sure you're getting enough sleep, so sleeping 8 hours a night well, heart rate variability, the cold exposure, and then the last one will be what you're eating. So what are you eating, and how is that providing you with recovery? When you've had a hard workout, most people are out there, first of all, most people are out there basing their exercise metabolism on carbohydrate-fueled exercise. So if you're doing that, you're already pushing your body into inflammation, into insulin resistance, so non-sensitivity, so towards diabetes, and it's may provide you with. Most people are already primed to operate better that way initially. They haven't, until you train your body to be a fat burner, more of a fat burner, that you start to get the benefits for that. So eating proper fats, and some great recovery food would be seafood, shellfish, grass-fed beef, vegetables, cool salads, things with microgreens and minerals and all kinds of different things. So organ meats are actually great. So liver and kidney and brain, those different things. Fabulous, rich with nutrients and antioxidants, all kinds of wonderful things. So knock the inflammation out with the cold, provide your body with the raw tools for performance and rebuilding itself with the foods. Seaweed is another one. And sleep. So those are the three things. So where are you on the spectrum right now? Are you overtrained right now? How can you tell? And what if you are, how do you get back to where you want to be? How do you get back to a place where you can be at your optimum? And I'm not going to cut any punches here. It takes some time. It's not going to happen overnight. It takes some time. So patience is of the essence. And I recorded a podcast recently with Stephanie Pavelka of the Surge Method of Swimming, and she was talking specifically about how impatient athletes are, especially triathletes, how impatient they are because the season is so long and we're training, we've got this mindset of train, so that all we want to do is improve our performance, and we are so afraid that our performance will drop if we take a little break, or we focus on recovery, or we focus on our technique or anything like that. Things which will all make us faster and stronger and ultimately more efficient out there in the race course. But it's the fear of lack. It's the fear of what we might lose that keeps us actually from attaining the performance that is possibly available to us, because it's not even available to us where we're at. We have to take our body to a place where our body can allow itself then to heal and make that new level of performance available to the body and to the mind. So this is key. This is really key. How do you do that? And I'm going to give you one of my assessments, and this is one that I handed out earlier. And the assessment is a micronutrition baseline assessment. And what you can do is you can take this assessment, you email it into me, and I will, respond to you. This is a free assessment, something I'm providing as part of the Endurance Summit. So anybody who's out there who's listening to this can go to the URL I'm going to give you, and I'll link to you down below. And you can fill out this assessment, and you can send it in to me, and I will go through the assessment, and then I'll give you a response to that. And so, we'll have to set up. I think it's probably a 10-minute appointment. And that's a free appointment. It's just something I'm doing for people who are part of this summit. And what that will tell you is, what is the state of your metabolic systems right now? What is the state of your metabolic systems right now? One of the 5 elements of performance, okay? Metabolic systems. But it's also going to tell you about a couple of them. And let's go back to those 5. So it's not going to tell you a lot about structural efficiency, but that will be a result of some of what comes out of this. Structural efficiency, you can get a good idea for swimming and running by taking the sport-specific biomechanics and flexibility assessment. So you can look at 3 different things. One is the breathing volume assessment, the second is the running sport-specific flexibility assessment, and the third is the swimming sport-specific flexibility assessment. And those 3 are what I offered in my earlier interview, and I'll offer those again today. Those are self-assessments, and all of those you can take. I've got those online, and I'll link out to them so you can go and take them. And then any questions that come out of that, feel free to contact me. We can follow up if you want to book a consult or wherever we can do that. The one that I'm offering to you as a complimentary service is the micronutrition baseline assessment. And that is going to give you an idea of what's going on metabolically, what's going on with your internal systems, your organ systems, your endocrine system, these vital systems that allow us to do everything we do. So that's going to help you measure metabolic efficiency. That's going to answer some questions about mental clarity and focus. That's going to answer some questions about even about strength and also about recovery. So highly encourage you to take that assessment, and I'm going to sign out in just a minute. So I want to thank you for listening to this. The summit is going to go on sale tomorrow. If you want to purchase the other episodes and listen to them again and go through this, there's a lot of fabulous information. I've referenced several of the different panelists, and we haven't even talked about Dr. Morcora with mental strength training, and he's got a free program that's coming out of that anybody's going to be able to use if you sign up for his website, which isn't even up yet, but when it is up, he'll notify you. You've got self-recovery tips from Kathy Flippin. You've got all kinds of different stuff. There's just so much amazing and awesome material in this summit. I can't say enough about the panelists. I learned a huge amount myself. I hope you guys did too. And so the purpose of putting this together was to kind of put together a suite of things in areas that I thought were underrepresented in kind of like the endurance sports zeitgeist, so to speak, the mind, the kind of like first to mind in the triathlete or the endurance sports. It's usually what the coach says, what the latest training session is, or latest training technique, or the latest tool that you can buy, or whatever. And those are things that are built on a foundation of the ability of your body to perform. So I'm talking about that stuff. The whole summit was based around that type of stuff, the foundations for training prior to even starting to train and race and all that. So fabulous material. Look for that starting tomorrow. And this is Manny Aragon of the Rolf Workshop Center for Structural Performance and producer and director of the 2014 Endurance Summit, signing out, thanking you for joining me. And I will quickly give my link. That is http:// Rolf, ROLF as in Frank, workshop, WORK, S as in Sam, HOP.com. The RolfWorkshop.com / S as in Sam, S as in Sam, B as in ball, A, S as in Sam, S as in Sam, E, S, S, M as in Mary, E, N as in Nancy, T, SS base assessment. And that, again, I will link out to in this, but for those of you listening, you'll be able to find it. Go and get your free assessments. They're at the bottom of the page. Click on the links, go through them, and if you want to follow up on that, feel free to contact me. I will help you to the best of my ability. Thanks again for listening to the summit, and I hope you got as much out of it as I do. This is Manny Aragon signing out for the 2014 Endurance Summit. Thanks again.